Welcome everybody. My name is Georgi. Today we're going to do a short course of how to use Blade UI from scratch. What is Blade UI? Blade UI is an amazing kit of renderless components for Laravel made by Dries Vens. The power of Blade UI is the flexibility you get. Each component can be extended, modified, or overwritten. All of the components are renderless, which means that they come without any styling and you have full control to style them the way you want it. Let's dive in. Let's start by installing a new Laravel project. Laravel new Blade UI. Okay, let's install now our Blade UI dependency. Let's open Blade UI website, go to installation, and see the steps. The first thing we need to do is we need to clear our config. Next, we need to install our composer dependency. Okay, our Blade UI kit is now already installed. For styling our component in this course, we're gonna be using Tailwind. So let's install Tailwind CSS. npm install Tailwind CSS and post CSS and auto prefixer. Now let's init our Tailwind configuration npx Tailwind CSS init. This will create a Tailwind config.js file. We can open it and see what is inside. Empty default Tailwind config. Next, let's head up to our webpack and add Tailwind CSS to our post CSS processor. Tailwind CSS. Last, let's open our CSS file and include Tailwind. That's all. Now let's do npm install. Let's compile our asset npm run dev. Okay, now we have a ready Laravel installation with Tailwind CSS included. The first component we're gonna take a look at is the layout HTML component. As you can see, this is the basic usage of the component. Let's copy this and go to our Laravel project. Let's open our default welcome blade and let's get rid of everything. Now let's paste in our component. What this component does, it will generate us automatically the HTML boilerplate we need in every HTML page. Let's save it, open it, view page source, and let's see, it has generated all of our head and body data automatically. What more we can do with this component? Let's say if you want to add a title, you can say title and add a test title, save, refresh. You can see now we have the test title. The next thing, we can control our head. We can add a slot in the head like this, and this will include this information about the favicon into our head component. Let's save it, refresh, and see it has included all the necessary component into the head. Okay, now in here we can also include our CSS file. Open it. As we can see, it's already included, and it is applying by default the Tailwind CSS styles. The next component we want to look at is the layout social meta information. With this component, you can easily generate your Twitter and Facebook metadata with just one line of code. Let's pick it up, social meta, and let's include it into our head. Save, and now if we refresh our page, you'll see that we have included all this information about Twitter and Facebook automatically. We include the OG image, the OG URL, the locale, and everything that is necessary to render properly your social media content. The next component I would like to show you is the alerts component. Let's go to the documentation and see how this one works. From documentation, we go under the alerts section. Let's copy our component. This will be the XAlert component. First thing, let's remove the hello world and let's paste it in. Now, if we refresh, it's not gonna show anything because we didn't flash the message to the session. We can do this by using the session flash message. Let's copy and let's add it into our code. We should open the web route and let's add it before we return the view. Save, and now if we refresh, we'll see this nice message. It's styled with Tailwind and you can change the styles the way you want. Let's say you want to make the text bigger. You can say text, large, save, refresh, you have a bigger text. The XAlert component allows us to have multiple types of messages. So let's say you want to have a success, a warning, and a danger message. Let's go to the documentation to see how we can do this. We can flash different messages to different types. Let's copy this, all these three types, and let's get rid of this one. Let's paste one, and now refresh. Nothing, because we didn't have the session message. Let's add all these three messages to our code. Copy, and let's include them before we return the welcome blade. Save, and refresh, and now we have three different messages. So with this way you can control all different types of messages you might want. If you would like to change the way that the content is rendered within the component, you can make a use of its slot. You can use this, for example, to add an icon inside the alert. The way you do this is by changing the position of where the message will be placed by using the component's message method. Let's see how to do this. Go to documentation, let's copy the component message. And let's open our code and let's change our success alert, for example. Let's close the alert and let's add the component message inside. Now if we save, we won't see any difference because we basically did the same thing by extracting the message in the between. Now let's open hero icons and grab an example icon that we want to include. Let's say success. Okay, doesn't have let's try something like check. Copy. This will give us the SVG code of the icon. Go back. Let's include it. Let's say we want to make it 5 and 5, and let's add some margin to the right. Save. And now if we refresh, and now we have this little icon. Let's say you want to make it on one line, you can do a flex, you can use flexbox and do flex, and then have another. And let's say you want to center them, you can do class self-center, and this one. And now refresh, and we have an alert with an icon in front. The last component we're going to cover in this episode is the navigation drop-down component. According to the documentation, for this component to work out of the box, we need to install also Alpine.js. Go back to our VS Code and let's install Alpine. npm install Alpine.js. Okay, we should import Alpine.js into our JS file and say import Alpine.js. And now let's compile our asset npm run dev. The last thing we need to do is to include our app.js file into our welcome blade. Let's open a welcome blade and include the JS right before the closing HTML tag. Let's go back to the documentation and grab the example component. Copy and let's paste. Save, refresh, and now you can see we have this little nice opening drop down. It works out of the box. When you click it, it shows, and when you click out, it hides the sub navigation. Let's see how we can style this component. Let's start with wrapping the drop down into a div. To this div, we should add some breathing space, margin left 10 and margin top 10. Let's style the button a little bit so it's a little bit better. Cloth, border, border solid, and border, for example, gray 600. Let's do rounded corners and let's add a shadow and some padding to the left and right and some padding to the top and bottom. Let's save. And now you can see we have this a little bit better looking button. Let's add, for example, a chevron icon to the left. Chevron, copy, and let's put it in here to the right. Let's make this flex and let's wrap the name into the span. Let's change it to menu. Sounds better. Equals self-center. Let's self-center this and let's add some margin on the left of the icon. Let's say 4. Refresh. And we have this little nice looking menu. Now let's style the menu itself. For example, we can wrap all this into a div. Let's create and let's say position absolute and let's add a shadow and flex cone. Refresh. What we get is now it's all in a nice looking shadow. Add some margin to the top as well. And it's starting to look better. Let's not add a separator, divide Y, divide gray 500, divide solid, refresh, and let's add some hover effect on the button and some better padding. Padding Y1 and hover background gray 100. Let's do the same here. Hover background gray 100 and to the last cannot hover background gray 100. Let's see. Looking better. We can add a little bit more padding, I believe, and we can round the corners. We can also add the border, and that should make our sub navigation, drop down navigation menu looking better. And maybe some padding here will be useful. And that should be enough to have a better looking drop down. Of course, you can do whatever you want and you can style the way you want it. The purpose was just to show you how easy it is to style any Blade UI component with Tailwind CSS. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post the next episode of my mini Blade UI course. See you next time.